Okay. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here for Understanding Municipal Government. This is the last part of a six-part series that's brought to you by the Alaska Literacy Program, the Peer Leader Navigators, Refugee and Immigration Services, and the Anchorage Public Library. My name is Menika Thiru. I'm the Community Engagement Librarian at the Anchorage Public Library, and I'm going to be your facilitator tonight. A really huge shout out to Naki for putting so much work into getting this series together. If you missed any of the past sessions, you can find them on the ALP YouTube page, and I'm going to just drop that link in the chat in case you're curious and would like to go back and watch some of the previous sessions. Before we get started with our program, I would like to acknowledge that I am calling in from the traditional lands of the Dena'ina. For thousands of years, the Dena'ina have been and continue to be the stewards of this land. It is with gratitude and respect that we recognize the contributions, innovations, and contemporary perspectives of the Upper Cook Inlet Dena'ina. I encourage you to let us know whose lands you are calling in from in the chat. So for today, we have three speakers. We have Chelsea Wardwaller, Megan Moffit, and May Ramirez-Xiong. I'm going to just give you a little info about each of our speakers, and then I'll toss it over to them to take it away with our presentations today. So Chelsea Wardwaller has worked at the municipality since August of 2019, doing public information and communications. She's been closely involved in the COVID-19 response from the early days of the Emergency Operations Center activation in March 2020. Much of her professional background has been connected to public health in a variety of ways, and she will be completing her Master of Public Health from UAA this summer. Outside of work, she enjoys outdoor activities with her husband and her two dogs. Megan Moffit is an investigator with the Anchorage Equal Rights Commission. She is originally from Illinois and has previously worked at Catholic Social Services, Refugee Resettlement Agency, and Alaska Legal Services. And May Ramirez-Xiong is the Deputy Ombudsman. She has been in the Ombudsman, oh my gosh, I always trip over that word. She has been in the Ombudsman's Office for over 5 years. Before the Ombudsman's Office, she worked a year in the Human Resources Department of the Municipality of Anchorage and more than 7 years in a California Superior Courthouse setting. She received her bachelor's in business administration and plans to further her education in the public administration field. Of all the jobs she has held, May says that being in the Ombudsman's office is by far her favorite. So I am going to toss it over to our presenters to take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Menika, and thank you, Naki, for having us this evening and to the Alaska Literacy Program. Let me just pull up my screen here. All right, are you all seeing my PowerPoint? Okay. I'm going to keep it in this view because I was trying to get the full presentation view and I wasn't sure how I have to do it on I have to zoom in on the desktop application instead of the actual Zoom application. Anyways, hopefully this isn't too distracting for folks. Thank you again for having me here this evening. Maybe I can't do both sharing and video. Okay. And I'm here to talk about municipal boards and commissions. There we go. Wow. Okay. Technology. It's amazing. As Menika mentioned, I've been with the municipality for a couple years now, and I've been on a few different municipal boards since before I was on working for the municipality. So I work for the Anchorage Health Department, but this presentation applies to the municipal government as a whole. So I have my logo on there because I feel like we need to brand things, and I'm glad we connected on the presentation because I was noticing your color scheme was matching mine. Little things that you recognize when you're in communications, and I'm sorry to bore everybody else with that at the end of a long day. But two of the boards that I serve on right now related to municipal activities are the Public Transit Advisory Board, which I'm going to pull some examples from throughout my presentation, and then one that's not a municipal board, it's actually, it's governmental, but it's not municipal, is the AMATS Bike and Pedestrian Advisory Board. So if you don't catch the hint, I am very interested in transportation, and that's an area of passion of mine. And before I go forward with this relatively dry presentation, I did want to just see if anybody here has been on a board or worked with a board, maybe any board, but specifically municipal boards would be great. And if not, any board, and just kind of wanted to hear folks' experience before I dive in.
Chelsea, I've served on the Women's Commission and another nonprofit board.
Awesome. So that's actually one of the health department boards that we're responsible for. Has anybody else attended a board or commission meeting or have any other experience with them?
Hi, my name is Rebecca Chol, but I come late, so I'm gonna listen.
Awesome.
I'm a peer leader navigator.
Awesome. Great. Thank you for listening in. All right. Well, then hopefully I can share some really interesting information with everybody. Again, it's a relatively dry topic, but there's a lot there, even though it's dry. And I definitely don't need to just blab on the whole time to everybody. So if you have questions, I have the chat bar pulled up, and Menika or Naki, feel free to, or Lori, feel free to tag me if there's a question in there, and I should pause and answer those. I want this to be focused on information that's relevant to everybody listening in, but hopefully we'll spark some questions and conversation as we go forward. All right. So overall, the municipality, or MOA, is how we sometimes shorten it to make it easier on us to just refer to it as MOA, which just means the Municipality of Anchorage. We have 44 boards and commissions, and those different boards and commissions are broken up into service area supervisory boards, regulatory and adjudicatory boards, and program advisory boards. And then the next thing I'm going to cover after I sort of dive into what each of those means is what it's like to be a board member. All right, so service area supervisory boards. That's a very ambiguous title for what's kind of like a homeowners association, but on a larger level. So this map shows sort of the south side of Anchorage. You might know the Glen Alps area, you might have heard of that, or Upper O'Malley. And basically each of these red areas and orange areas are a neighborhood that comes together, and they get to decide sort of what type of road service they get, whether they want snow plows or not, or and in other parts of town it also includes sort of the recreation. So maybe like in Chugiak Eagle River, they have their board, their service area supervisory board is related to their parks. And so these ones really don't affect you unless you live within one of these areas where they have one of those. And they get to elect, you know, the people that live in that area get to elect those that live on those boards. So we'll move on to regulatory and adjudicatory boards and commissions. So these are the ones, and you'll hear a little bit more about one in particular coming up soon, so I won't spoil it too much, but these are the ones that sort of establish standards. They grant waivers, sometimes they impose fines or enforce standards in different ways. And so the Equal Rights Commission is an example of one of those, and then maybe you've heard of the Planning and Zoning Commission. That's another pretty big one that makes some pretty big decisions for the municipality as well. So these ones actually take action in terms of, you know, sort of policy and standards that people have to follow. And then finally, we have these program advisory boards. And one of them, Lori mentioned the Anchorage Women's Commission. I'll bring it up in the next slide as an example as well. But these are boards and commissions that really are focused on a specific topic. The Public Transit Advisory Board that I mentioned that I'm on is another one, another example of this. And they really, they provide advice and to both the mayor and the assembly on that specific topic. So then if you really wanted to dive into all 44 different boards, you could go to this website up here, onboard.muni.org. And then I just wanted to provide, without going through all 44, I just wanted to provide some examples. So we talked about Anchorage Women's Commission, Animal Control Advisory Board, Health and Human Services Commission, Housing, Homelessness, and Neighborhood Development Commission, and the Senior Citizens Advisory Commission. And so these 5 are the ones that my department, the Anchorage Health Department, the department I work for, is responsible for. So we have staff that report to all of these commissions and provide them support. And basically, you know, each commission or board would have a respective department or staff that would do something similar. But I don't know that all departments would necessarily have a board that they would staff. They would likely have a board that they would be related to. So it's not necessarily going both ways. Okay, so I'll take a quick pause there and see, are there any questions? I'm going to dive into what it's like to be a board member and sort of those responsibilities, but are there any questions about what the boards are at the municipality? I'm not seeing anything in the chat. Okay, I'll keep moving. So board members are appointed, and then sometimes they meet certain qualifications. So for example, on the Public Transit Advisory Board, we have certain seats, like one that must be represented by somebody who either represents people who experience disabilities or who is a person who experiences disabilities. And then different boards have different seats. Excuse me. And then, so that person would have to qualify for that seat. And then most board members serve 3 terms. So every October is when board terms end. And so about a third, if you serve for 3 years, about a third of the board members on all the boards are up for either reappointment or stepping off if their term has ended. And for whatever reason that happens in October, even though you can join a board at any point in the year, that's just sort of the timing that it's set. But applications are kept on hand, and so if you apply at any point, you can either fill it in October when those come due, or you can fill it, as I said, sort of any time in the year. And you go back to that onboard.muni.org to fill out an application if you're interested. And that application is sent to the mayor's office. The mayor's office sort of does a little bit of background research and maybe reaches out to you to make sure you're still interested if there's not a vacancy right away. And then the mayor's office would then send your application on to the assembly to get fully appointed to serve on the board or commission that you're interested in. And I think that's that. So yeah, okay. And then, so quorum is a fun word that's used a lot in board meetings. And that basically means yes, Lori, I'll get to your question here in either on this slide or the next one, I think. Thank you. Everyone, except for those specific seats, I think that I mentioned where, you know, it's reserved for a specific population. Everybody that's a resident of Anchorage is eligible to serve. So you don't have to be a citizen or not a citizen. It's just an Anchorage resident. You can't live in Oklahoma and decide that you want to serve on a board. One of the health department boards recently had a board member step off because she's moving to a new job in North Dakota. So the Anchorage Health Department Commission is not as related to her job and her life now. So that's how that works. So back to this funny word quorum, which you hear a lot in board meetings, regardless of whether or not they're municipal, is basically so the Public Transit Advisory Board has 9 members, and we have to have 5 of those members at the meeting to make a quorum. So it has to be half or more of the board members present. And depending on your board, you may have bylaws that say quorum is 2/3, or, you know, set quorum as something different, but my understanding is that for most municipal boards, quorum is half or more. And that's so that you can't take any action without having quorum present at the meeting. So that's why that word is said a lot and is pretty important and necessary for business. And business just means kind of like taking action. And so meetings, another funny part about board meetings is that they follow Robert's Rules of Order. And that's just a very formal way to set up a meeting. So if we were following Robert's Rules of Order, before I started my presentation, I would say, you know, and say Menica, instead of just facilitating, she was actually chairing the meeting. I would say, thank you, Chair Menica. Through the chair, I'll now begin my presentation. And it's really a way, it sounds funny and it sounds very formal, but it's a way to help us come together on topics where there might be pretty significant differences and maintain a peaceful and active discussion without, you know, people shouting over each other and things maybe going sideways. And it just helps sort of frame the meetings so that we're respectful and but we can discuss lots of different topics from lots of different perspectives. And so I'll come back to Robert's Rules of Order a little bit. I mentioned that most, if not all, boards and commissions have staff liaison support. And so those staff often work with sort of the chair of the board or commission, or maybe the chair and the vice chair, to set agendas. Those agendas and then the minutes are kind of the very formal notes from the meeting. The agendas and minutes become public record, and the agendas have to be posted a certain number of days before the meeting happens due to, you know, public records laws and you know, making sure the public is aware that things are happening and what that board is discussing. And then those meetings are open to the public, so you can attend these board and commission meetings if there's a topic of interest to you, if it's a commission that you're interested in that you just kind of want to keep track of what they're tracking. And yeah, you should always be able to attend meetings if boards, especially, absolutely, if boards are taking action. Those are definitely open meetings. There are sometimes work sessions or, you know, emails that go on behind the scenes, but people can't take any action in those activities. They can just sort of like maybe discuss a topic in more detail that they would then present at a meeting in order to take action on it. All right. So going on to sort of what it's like to be a board member, the time commitment, I'm going to refer back to the Public Transit Advisory Board that I mentioned that I'm on. It means once a month. Not all boards meet once a month. Again, you have to have quorum to meet. So if you don't have quorum, sometimes boards don't meet and they skip a month or something like that. Some boards meet quarterly. Some boards meet more often than once a month if there's a lot of action that they have to take, if they're maybe one of those regulatory boards that they have to review things more frequently. So that's part of the commitment. And then, as I mentioned, sometimes there are emails outside of meetings, and then sometimes there are work sessions in addition. And those work sessions feed into the next bullet on training. The board that I'm on, we got training on Robert's Rules of Order because we had a new chair coming in who wasn't as familiar with it. We felt like we weren't sort of doing a good job of organizing our meetings and making sure that we were being respectful of the public involvement that was happening. And so we had, I believe it was actually somebody from the clerk's office came in and helped us with some training on Robert's Rules of Order. So there is some training that comes along with being a board member, and you can request some, and you can request assistance from that staff liaison, but it's not a heavy amount of training. Normally it's somebody getting involved in a board or commission that they already have some background knowledge or understanding of that subject area. There isn't any pay for board meetings, but sometimes there are incentives. For example, the Public Transit Advisory Board used to pass out bus passes, free bus passes for everybody that was in attendance. And that meant that board members could also get those free bus passes if we needed them. But absolutely gave it to everybody from the public that would attend. which was a great way to get people to come and help us understand sort of their experiences with the public transit system, which then helped us, with that advisory role that we had. And then finally, I already sort of touched on this a little bit, but the agenda items. Agenda items often come from staff, or they come from the commission through the chair, and then the chair and the staff work together to set those agendas. And I would say if you're interested in something getting on the agenda of a commission or a board, that to either reach out to the chair or to the staff member, or if it's a really hot button topic that the public has voiced a lot of interest in, they're automatically going to be taking that up. At the Public Transit Advisory Board, we would hear public involvement, and we would often take that input and put it into the next board agenda. So if it's something that seems like it's affecting a lot of people, it's likely already going to be on the agenda. But it doesn't hurt to reach out to those chairs or those staff liaison support. And I think, luckily, I'm done talking at you about boards and commissions, but I really would welcome questions or comments, and happy to answer anything else or fill in any other gaps. Mackie sent me a really great list of questions beforehand that I tried to base this off of, but yeah, I'd love to fill in any gaps that I may have missed.
Question. Can you talk a little bit about what kind, or how they decide things? Is it kind of like a community council where they might pass a resolution and then present it to the assembly? Or is it more like the mayor might ask them to make a decision on something and then it's kind of final? How does it flow in and out of the mayor's office or the assembly?
That's a great question. I would say it goes both ways in my experience. And again, I don't speak for all boards. I haven't experienced all 44 of them, but the ones that I have experienced and in my background, we both sort of, as a board, we come together around ideas or suggestions, maybe from the public or maybe from a planning process that the Public Transportation Department has gone through and said, we really want to push this forward. We really want to support this activity and tell the mayor and the assembly about it. But then also sometimes the assembly comes to us and says, hey, we're really interested in this. Can you guys talk about it and figure out what you would recommend on this topic area? That happened over the winter this last year. At least one, maybe a couple assembly members are really interested in pursuing a fare free program for our public transit. And so they came to us and said, how should we go about moving forward with next steps for a fare free program? And so we took that back as a board and sort of discussed it through multiple board meetings, got some more public input on that, and then passed a letter of recommendation back onto them. Does that answer your question? Awesome, thank you. And then I'm seeing Lori in the chat, what kind of decisions or community impact does one have when serving? And so this is a little bit of a tricky question to answer, in my opinion. I think you can kind of have as much community impact as you want. I would say some of the boards are much more active and maybe get more stuff done or maybe have more of an impact than others. Again, as I mentioned, sort of those regulatory and adjudicatory boards, those ones they have really formal functions that they serve, and they, so those boards I would say have a really, really big impact. The more of the program advisory boards also have an impact, but rather than saying like, you can build your house there or no, you can't build your house there, they're sort of saying, as I mentioned, like, we recommend doing more analysis before going through a transit fare free program. So there are just lots of different levels. And then some boards don't meet very often. They maybe provide a helpful outlet for people to discuss an issue, but it's a pretty, I would say not an impact at all. It still can have a pretty big community impact, but it's perhaps a smaller level or less of a commitment and less of a obvious impact than some others. And so didn't mean to dance around that question, but it is a little bit of a variety and has a wide range of possible community impact. I would say if you're really passionate and interested in a topic and want to join a commission that's focused on that, you could make as much of an impact as you're willing to sort of stick your neck out there and make happen. Lori, I hope that sort of answered your question.
Thank you so much, Chelsea. Are there any other questions either in the chat or if someone wants to unmute and ask a question?
I'll ask another one, but yeah, if anyone has another question, please feel free. I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about the application process. Is it the same application for every board, and then are you approved by the mayor and then voted on by the assembly, or is it decided by that board whether they accept you? Just to give someone an idea of what it's like to apply.
Yeah, that's a great question, and that's another process that's a little bit it's a little bit variable. It is one application to all boards. That has changed since I applied. Oh no, maybe it hasn't, but it's gotten more streamlined. The municipality has done a better job of sort of funneling, of creating this website that I shared with you. I can pull it back up, or I can drop it in the chat. The onboard.muni.org. Here, let me just do it while I'm thinking about it. And so that has the list of boards, it has the application, it has the list of board members, so you can look me up on there, make sure that I'm telling the truth. And then that goes, as I mentioned, to the mayor's office. And so when I joined the Public Transit Advisory Board, I'll share an experience and then I'll come back to answering your question more directly. But when I joined the Public Transit Advisory Board, they could not meet because they could not take action because they did not have quorum as a group. They didn't have enough people sitting on the board at that time. And so they were recruiting heavily, and they were also really actively pursuing anybody that had applied. And so when I applied, they wanted to let me know, have me tell them when I applied, and then the public transportation department made sure to follow up with the mayor's office that they had somebody apply for a board member position. And so then the mayor's office would set, look that over, make sure that they were comfortable with it, and then forward that on to the assembly. So my process moved very quickly, but it doesn't always move quickly. So if there's not an open board seat, or maybe the board is pretty full but not completely full, but there's not sort of an urgent need to fill all the seats, you could sit in that application pool for a really long time. So it's helpful if you know that you're interested in a board to contact the chair or contact the staff liaison and sort of help nudge your application along, which is, not a burden that applicants should have to bear, but it is a burden, unfortunately, that's just sort of part of the multi-layered system in order to get onto a board. So it's just a little bit, it just takes a few different steps, and sometimes those steps get a little bit log-jammed for a variety of reasons, not necessarily on purpose, but that's just, I hope that answered your question.
Sure, and then is it voted on by the board if you're accepted onto the board, or who makes the final decision if you're on the board?
Yeah, so the mayor sort of reviews your application, and if the mayor's office, the administration is good with it, they send it on to the assembly, and then the assembly is who appoints all of the board and commissioners. But the current board members, the Public Transit Advisory Board members don't decide who else gets to join. They're just automatically joined if the assembly decides, appoints them.
I have one last question, or maybe it's not the last question, but one more question. Is the application online only, or do you know if there's a paper version?
That's a really good question. I don't know the answer to that. It wouldn't surprise me that you would be able to fill out a paper copy. I think it is primarily online. But I think if you needed to fill out a paper copy, there could be an option for that.
And I will put a little plug in for the library that if there is anyone who wasn't comfortable doing it on your own online, or you don't have access to a computer or to internet, you could definitely come to the library and we could help you submit the application.
Amazing resource at the library.
Well, are there any other questions? Oh, I see a question from Lori in the chat. Are language translation services provided?
They should be required to be provided. It might be a cumbersome process because I would imagine that not all boards and commissions are regularly provide them, but yes, they should be provided.
Could you, what about making like a new board, or could you have a board that had a meeting that was like a Spanish meeting? You know, are there any rules around that?
So making a new board, I think, would take assembly action. I think it would have to go in code, perhaps, or at least be very formal. But in terms of having a Spanish meeting, I don't see why that wouldn't be possible, as long as I think there would then need to be perhaps English translation services if there were members of the public that needed that opportunity. But yeah, I don't see why it couldn't go back and forth. But I'm sorry, I don't have an official answer on that one. It's a great question. And then the easy to see calendar, there should be. It's not on board, I think it's like the page before that.
I just dropped a link in the chat that I think might be the calendar for the board and commission meetings.
Of course, my municipal computer does not want to go to that muni.org link. I think you're probably right, Monica. Thank you. I trust you. Yeah.
Any last questions for Chelsea? Okay, well, thank you so much, Chelsea, for the presentation. I know I learned a lot, and I'm sure that other folks did as well. We are going to move on to Megan now.
Thanks so much. I'll drop my information in the chat if anybody wants to follow up with any questions. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. I'm sorry, did you say May or Megan?
Megan.
Okay, great. Just wanted to double check. Let's see if I can share my screen. Let's see. Are you seeing a PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. And just the PowerPoint?
It doesn't look like you're in present mode, but yes, we're only seeing PowerPoint in the other windows.
I'm sorry, I can't quite hear you. What did you say?
So it looks like you are not in present mode, but we can see only PowerPoint, so I don't see.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Like that.
Excellent. I'm going to follow Chelsea's experience and just do it in this mode and avoid any other issues. Okay, great. Thank you. Well, hello, everybody. My name is Megan, and I'm an investigator with the Anchorage Equal Rights Commission. First off, I want to thank all of you for joining us today, and special thanks to the Alaska Literacy Project, plus CSS and the Anchorage Public Library for hosting us. We're really excited to be here and share more about our services. In this presentation, I'm going to give some information about our office and then give a basic overview of anti-discrimination law in Anchorage. Unfortunately, this presentation is going to have a lot of legal terms, but I'll do my best to briefly explain their meanings, so thank you for hanging in there with me. So what is the Anchorage Equal Rights Commission? Our office was established in the Anchorage Charter in 1975, so we've been around for a while. We are a municipal law enforcement agency responsible for preventing and eliminating unlawful discrimination under Title V of the Anchorage Municipal Code. We also have a work-share agreement with the National Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, more commonly known as the EEOC, to enforce federal anti-discrimination laws. So this is a very big mission, of course, but essentially we want to be available as a resource to anyone in the municipality of Anchorage from Girdwood to Eagle River who feels they're experiencing discrimination or just wants to learn more about anti-discrimination law. So a few more facts about us, just for context. We are located on the first floor of City Hall, actually just down the hall from Maine Ombudsman's Office, so she'll be speaking next. All of our services are free, and if someone's issue is not within our jurisdiction, we do our best to provide referral to other agencies or resources. So people are, welcome to call again if their situation develops and they feel like it's a good match for our agency's resources and jurisdiction. And it's important to note that throughout our process, we are an impartial third party, and we're not an advocate for either side. We're simply trying to determine if unlawful discrimination took place. And finally, we just like to note that we're available by phone, email, or in-person visits, and we do have an interpreter service available if needed, and many of our investigators speak other languages. And then we always like to do a plug for our intake questionnaire on our website. It's on the front page of our website. It's very simple, but it helps gather some basic information about a person and their issue. Sometimes it helps people organize their thoughts. And then if you submit that to our office, a staff member would reach out within about a business day to review the information with you. So in order to understand what our office does, we first need to understand the meaning of discrimination. To discriminate against someone means to treat that person differently or often less favorably based on an aspect of their identity. So this different treatment can happen in a variety of ways. This list of terms covers some of the ways people might experience discrimination, and I'm going to review them just very briefly. So this first one, disparate treatment, is probably the most well-known way people experience discrimination. It means someone is treated less favorably than others based on an aspect of their identity, so kind of the standard definition we know. For example, I might be the only woman in my office, and I learned that all of my male coworkers make $2 more an hour than I do, even though I have the same amount of experience and time with the company. That could possibly be an example of disparate treatment. Disparate policy means that there is a policy or rule in place that affects one group of people more than the others. So this is kind of a broader situation that's a little bit more rare. This third one, harassment. So this is kind of a common word we all know, but legally it refers to unwelcome conduct that becomes more severe or more frequent, enough that it creates a work environment that feels intimidating or hostile, and you no longer feel safe or comfortable to be in that environment, but you need to be to continue your employment or your services. So for example, might be constantly making comments about a person's appearance even after they've asked those comments to stop. And then this fourth one, failure to accommodate. That's arguably the most complicated. We could probably have an hour presentation just on that. But failure to accommodate means essentially that there was a failure to try to agree on an arrangement that a person needed for a disability or religious reason in order to fully participate, most often for employment. So this specifically applies to religion or disability situations where a person might have a special need for whatever reason. And then finally, this last one, retaliation, means that it's unlawful to discriminate against someone because they reported for just discrimination. So for example, if I submitted a report to the AARC against my workplace and I still worked there, and my workplace learned about it and said, I'm causing too much trouble and fires me, then I could have an additional case with the AARC to file for retaliation. So earlier we reviewed that discrimination means treating someone differently based on an aspect of their identity, and this is a list of identities and personal characteristics that are protected under the law, and they're known as protected classes. So I'm just going to go over these very briefly. Race, and then color, it refers to the person of color skin. Religion, national origin, that refers to a person's place of birth. Sex, pregnancy, age, and that can be any age, young, old, in the middle. Sexual orientation, gender identity, physical or mental disability. There are a few definitions for disability. but most commonly, a condition is considered a disability if it substantially limits a major life activity, such as walking or talking or even concentrating. So this is a much broader definition than the average person might realize. And that includes, yes, both physical and mental disability. And then the last three, marital status. So if you're married, single, divorced, parenthood, if you have any children, and then retaliation, which we just went over in the last slide. So AERC jurisdiction covers a wide range of places where discrimination can happen. This includes jobs, housing, schools, financial services like banks, public services like the bus, or public accommodations, which is a fancy word for basically any places that has the services open to the public, like hotels or restaurants. And it's important to note that the AERC files discrimination complaints against agencies or companies or other similar institutions. We don't file complaints against individual people. So for example, if a boss was causing an issue, the AERC would be filing the complaint against the company, not the boss by name. So employment is one of the most common places that a person experiences discrimination, and this is a list of ways that an employee might feel they're being treated differently than their coworkers. So the most common example would be firing an employee. That's kind of one we might all know. But discrimination can also happen through a wide variety of other ways, like promotions or pay decisions. And at the AERC, we would be looking specifically to see if these employer decisions were made because of or motivated by a person's protected class or identity. Oops, sorry, here we go. So this flow chart shows a brief overview of our process. And when a person files a complaint with us, they are known as a complainant, and the place that they're filing against is called the respondent. So when I use those terms, that's what that means. Sorry if I slip up and use them accidentally. So a person would contact us to describe their situation. They would talk to an investigator like me, and we would determine if their issue falls under our jurisdiction. If it does, we would work with the complainant to file a complaint with our office, and they are now known as a complainant. From there, we would send the formal paperwork notifying both the complainant and the respondent that a complaint has been filed with our office and the details of it. And then we would schedule what's called a fact-finding conference. So a fact-finding conference is an opportunity for both parties to meet over the phone and to talk about the issues listed in the complaint and then answer any questions from an AERC investigator. So at that time, that's also an opportunity for a voluntary settlement discussion where both parties would decide if they can come to an agreement that would end the issue. If both parties do not agree to a voluntary settlement, then the AERC moves forward into an impartial investigation that may take several months. During that time, we're looking for substantial evidence of unlawful discrimination, and if we cannot find substantial evidence, then the case is closed, but the complainant can file for reconsideration, which asks us to look at our findings again. If there is substantial evidence of discrimination, then the AERC will pursue what's called a conciliation, and calculate what's called a make-whole relief for the complainant. So that's make-whole relief is any relief that can be reasonably calculated to put the complainant in a position as if the discrimination hadn't occurred, and then also to eliminate the discriminatory practice or policy. So that was kind of a bit of legalese, but in a practical sense, a very simple example might be if someone was unjustly terminated and they spent 2 months looking for a new job. If they had a conciliation with our office, we might provide those 2 months of wages that the complainant missed out on while they were looking for a new job. And that's a very simple example. And then we might also require the respondent to undergo a training that would hopefully help mitigate any future circumstances where discrimination could take place again. And then if they cannot agree to a conciliation, a public hearing might occur, but that's very rare. And I apologize, our reconsideration process there in the bottom is a little bit more complicated than this slide portrays, but if I put in all the details, it wouldn't really be readable, but I'm happy to answer any questions about it. And then last but not least, this is just a quick example of a type of issue we might see at the AERC. So Marta is from Guatemala and works as an accountant in Anchorage. Her coworkers constantly make comments to her about her appearance and her accent, even though she asks them to stop. She reports this to her manager, and the manager tells her to ignore them. What should she do? So as we might have just learned, it's possible that Marta is experiencing discrimination, specifically harassment based on her national origin, the place she was born, or possibly her race, depending on the information she tells us. So we would recommend that Marta reach out to the AERC and explain her situation to us. And at that time, when we're doing her intake, we would ask her about her job and ask her to give us some specific examples about when her coworkers might have behaved inappropriately to her and about her reports to her manager about the situation. And since she's still working there, we might also ask her to keep us updated on any developments or changes in this behavior, like if she experiences retaliation for reporting to her office. And then later, if the case moved into investigation, the AARC might ask for any documentation of the discriminatory behavior, or we might interview her coworkers to see if there are any witnesses. We would also be looking to see if Marta's protected class was a motivating factor in the behavior of her coworkers and her manager. And then in addition to that, we would be seeing if the employer could show a legitimate non-discriminatory reason for their actions or behavior, or if the employer's decisions were consistent for all their employees. And then based on all of this information and based on the situation of the case, we would issue our determination within that flowchart you just saw. And that's about it. I realize that was a lot kind of quick, but are there any questions I can answer at this time?
And start it off again. I wonder if you could say, I think sometimes if someone was facing discrimination, they might not know to document it. So could you tell us what that means to document it so that they have stuff to show you if they do end up filing a complaint?
Yeah, that's a great question. So if someone is like Marta and they're experiencing harassment, or they feel like they're experiencing some other discrimination, it's a great idea to take notes on, what happened, when it happened, who was involved, who might have witnessed it, and that's both before and during the complaint process if it's, ongoing. And then it's also worthwhile, if you feel that it's safe and comfortable to do so, to also report any issues to your manager. If your manager is causing the problem, then naturally that complicates the situation, and you need to make the best decision for yourself and your safety, or your job security, or whatever other situation you might be in. But yeah, it's valuable to give us as many details as possible. Thank you. Did I fully answer your question? Okay, great.
Are there any other questions for Megan?
I see a comment. I've heard from people in the ALP community that they have a hard time renting. They're given many, I think that's barriers when trying to get an apartment. What do you suggest? I would definitely suggest that they reach out to us if they feel like it's related to an aspect of their identity, like if it's because of their language barrier or their race or whatever else might be happening there, and give us some details about what their interactions were with that landlord. And also if it's, a more time immediate issue, since we do have a bit of a longer process for housing issues, we often also recommend people contact Alaska Legal Services as well, since they sometimes have a faster timeline to providing help if someone's facing an eviction or something like that.
Last chance for questions for Megan. Not really. You can probably reach out to me later, but I want to give a space for anyone with burning questions that like answer.
Also, I'm sorry, I definitely thought I had my video on this whole time, but Thank you for following along with the presentation.
Well, thank you so much, Megan. We really appreciate you being here. So next we're going to go to May. And Megan, we might have to have you stop sharing your screen. And May, you are muted. May, we can't hear you. You are muted.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So my name is May, and I am the Deputy Ombudsman. I've been with the Ombudsman's Office close to 6 years, and with the city a total of almost 7 years. So let's begin with me showing my screen. This is probably the first time I'm going to do this, so I hope you guys can bear with me. Okay.
And we can see your presentation.
Okay. Alrighty. So what is the Anchorage Ombudsman? Well, the Municipal Ombudsman's Office is your independent voice for fairness. The Ombudsman is a Swedish term meaning protector and defender of citizens' rights. The municipal charter provides for a legislative ombudsman covered in Article 4.07. Our office is empowered and governed by the Anchorage Municipal Code, Chapter 2.60. The Ombudsman is an impartial and independent agency, is an legislative ombudsman, maintains confidentiality, and our services are free. The Ombudsman's office and the staff may not participate in or donate to municipal candidates or campaigns. So the Ombudsman's office investigates departments, employees, and agents of the municipality. That includes the Anchorage Police Department, the Anchorage Fire Department, and the Anchorage School District. Complaints and concerns may result from the action or lack of action by a municipal employee or a school district employee. In an investigation, the Ombudsman may enter without notice the premises of a department during normal business hours. It can review any relevant municipal documents, take testimony which we feel or deemed relevant to an investigation, issue a subpoena to gather information. But impeding an investigation does carry a fine up to $500. I believe it's a misdemeanor. After an investigation, the Ombudsman may bring the matter to the attention of a department head, the municipal manager, the mayor, the assembly, or the public. We can recommend changes to the municipal code and to policies and procedures. We can require department to notify us when their actions has been taken on the recommendations that we make. The municipal department and the school district are not required to follow the Ombudsman's recommendation, but they usually do. The Ombudsman must consult with a department or person before offering a report or recommendation critical of that department or person. The Ombudsman may initiate an investigation if they believe the issues are unreasonable, unfair, oppressive, arbitrary, capricious, and abuse of discretion, or unnecessarily discriminatory, even though in accordance with law, contrary to law or otherwise erroneous, based on improper or irrelevant grounds. Sorry, I accidentally typed that. Let's go back. Sorry. Or a mistake or of fact unsupported by adequate statements or reasons. The Ombudsman may decline or cease investigation when there is an adequate remedy already in place. The complainant is trivial, made in bad faith, or untimely. The Ombudsman's office has insufficient resource to investigate. The complainant declines a fair and reasonable resolution, or the complainant has no standing. When a person has no standing, it could be a situation involving someone else and has nothing to do with you, and that individual just wanted to know more about a complaint or just decides that they want to file a complaint on someone's behalf. They have no standing and we can't file a complaint on someone else's behalf. The Ombudsman's office does not investigate the assembly, the mayor, the school board, state or federal agencies, private party disputes, tenant and landlord disputes, decisions more than a year old, generally, matters that have been adjudicated or are adjudicated by the courts, matters that are not jurisdictional. Right here, we have our 2020 processing statistics. So when someone contacts the Ombudsman's office, there's 3 ways to categorize the entry. It could be a case, a referral, or a contact. Typically, when something is considered a contact, it's when someone calls our office and they have a concern about maybe a specific department. And after communicating their concerns with us, they decide they don't want to pursue anything. The call stops there and we don't do anything further. That becomes a contact. We do have individuals that sometimes call their office and they're not sure, if they want to pursue a complaint, or if they, a lot of times they just want to vent. That becomes a contact as well. When something becomes a referral, it's when someone calls our office, they're not sure where to go, they're not sure where to start, where to begin with their concerns. And if during the intake process, we determine it's a different department, for example, code enforcement, if you have concerns about your neighbor, and something that could be a potential violation on their property, and you're just not sure, we would refer you to code enforcement. So that becomes a referral. I like to think of our office as a last stop, but sometimes we are one of the first stops because people just aren't sure where exactly to go. But when something becomes a case is when we start inquiring into something, contacting a department, and get more involved in a particular concern that comes up. In 2020, we have about 861 referrals, 332 contacts, and we opened about 152 cases with a total inquiry of 1,345. This is just our 2020 case processing statistics. Moving forward, we have here is our 2020 top 10 departments. So we like to have a chart knowing what our top 10 are. And as you can tell, last year, development services was one of our top 10. And we have the police department, the finance department, maintenance and operation, the assembly, mayor's office, parks and recs, health department. When it's not department specific, it could be something general and didn't have a department, but we had inquired into something related to a concern just that wasn't department specific, and then human resource. In this chart, we have our 2020 case by district. As you can tell, the chart shows you the different districts. So we have downtown, Eagle River, and Chuyak. District 3, which is West Anchorage, then 4, which is Midtown. District 5, East Anchorage. District 6, South Anchorage. Then we also categorize some out of Anchorage when we get calls from individuals out of Anchorage or concerns that just aren't related to the municipality. And so we have that. And then, of course, the ones where districts are unknown. This is our case inventory, and it shows the last 4 years of the Ombudsman's office. You can tell that 2017, we had about 193 closed cases, 198 open cases. and 2018, 19, and 2020. The Anchorage Municipal Ombudsman's Office serves as an information resource for residents and visitors. As I've mentioned, sometimes even though we consider ourselves last stop, we are sometimes the first stop, trying to help individuals navigate municipal government, letting them know where they can go for a particular concern or a situation that they're unsure of where to go. We do public outreach. You can find more about us on the muni.org. File a complaint on CityView public portal. There's a lot about our office and our office brochure. There's also an online complaint form that can be found on our website. We have our business cards that on the back of our cards list some of our top departments where individuals would contact our office, and it's pretty amazing. So one of these days, if you guys can stop by and grab one of our business cards. And of course, the Ombudsman attends community councils and community organization events for public outreaches. So ways that you can contact us is you can come into City Hall, first floor. We are in Suite 100. Okay, you can also contact us by phone, mail, email, and file a complaint online on the CityView portal, on the website listed there. Well, that was pretty fast. All righty, well, if anyone has any questions, I know that we're jumping into this pretty quickly. We are towards the end of the day here, and I was trying to stick as closely as possible to the PowerPoint, so we're not going outside of our time here. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to go ahead and let me know.
I just had a comment. Thank you for sharing all that data about your office. It seems like you guys are amazingly effective. So thank you for all you do.
Oh, thank you.
Question maybe to either both of you. Can you just kind of say what the difference is between Ombudsman and AERC in terms of what kinds of case you deal with? And then also maybe like what you both offer free services. So what falls within your realm, and then when does a lawyer have to get involved maybe?
Okay, so sorry, I will begin by saying that our office usually handles typically any type of concerns related to the municipality and or and their agencies. For example, fire department, of course, the police department, school district. It's very broad. We usually deal with things that you don't see every day. So for example, if you had issues about your taxes and you have tried to resolve them with the property tax department and you felt that your concerns were not properly considered, you can come to our office. We would do like an intake review, maybe inquire into the concerns, determine if there's something there for our office to review. If we determine in the midst of our inquiry that there was someone above the chain of command that you haven't communicated with, then we would first refer you to that individual. But our code requires that our office don't investigate into complaints or concerns against the municipality and its agencies without first allowing them the opportunity to respond or be made aware of those concerns. So, it could be anything from, hey, I've been contacting code enforcement for several days now. My neighbor's got something in their yard. I'm not quite sure if this is allowed, but they're not responding. And we can connect you with them. We do follow-ups. Not everything that comes into our office becomes a case. So, as you can tell, our referral numbers are much bigger because anytime we do any inquiries, again, if we determine that someone else in the chain of command has not been made aware of the concerns, that case becomes a referral. So that's what we do. But our office does not handle discrimination complaints. And that's when we would refer someone, if they come to our office about a discrimination, we would refer them to the Equal Rights Commission.
You said you handle some cases with the school district. What kind of cases do families or individuals bring around the school district?
So this one is going to be an interesting one, but sometimes it could be anything from an employee having concerns about their employment. And we have to review HR, go from there. But typically it could be anything. We've gotten complaints before from individuals who had concerns about their children's, I believe it's like LPN or something of that nature, where they have to, or the programs and things like that. But what it does is, we would look at those concerns only after the school district has had the opportunity to look at it. So it could range from anything from a parent who's concerned about their children's learning to an employee who has an HR complaint, or somebody who feels that their application wasn't considered. And even then, though, of course, there's an extensive intake and review process before we could even jump into investigating any sort of complaints. We have to make sure that all parties involved, including the school district and the proper chain of command, have been made aware of the concerns and had the opportunity to respond. Our office simply provides a second set of eyes into the investigation already performed. And when let's say we learn something that we decided wasn't properly considered or may have been missed by the department, the most that we can do is provide recommendations, suggestions, or offer our opinion. We don't have any enforcement powers. I believe that a lot of individuals that come to our office, they just want to make sure that when communicating their concerns to the department and given the final answer from them, that at least someone can overview everything that has been done and just make sure that, they were being treated fairly. And that's basically what it is in our office, is being able to provide that second set of eyes into the investigation, or, what the department has done. And, sometimes reassuring the individuals who contact our office that the department is correct in what they're doing, or if they're not, we would recommend that they review whatever it is that we have learned and take a second look at the concerns.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? So you can learn more about our office and what we do by going on our website at muni.org, and it's /department/ombud. I'll drop that down on the chat here too. Basically what we do is we share our annual report on our website, and it talks about some of our highlighted cases. I should have talked about one of our 2020 cases last year, where a constituent contacted our office alleging that the municipal property appraisal division had removed his residential exemption because they learned that he had advertised his home for rent online. The constituent stated that he learned of the removal of the tax exemption, and he called property appraisal and was informed that they had removed the tax exemption because he had not responded to letters that they have sent him. But after I've looked at it, and we made a recommendation that the property appraisal reconsider and reinstate the constituent's residential property tax exemption for 2018 and 19. Those are the years that he listed his property online. And so they actually did reinstate those based on our recommendation. And so you can find so much more at this. There's so many departments, and I can't just think of something on top of my head, but it's always something new in our office. We don't always look at the same thing, and usually when we do, we can quickly respond to a complaint that comes in. But like I said, there's several departments within the municipality. We get calls about concerns about animal control, and the list just goes on. But feel free to, when you get a chance, go online and review one of our annual reports.
Thank you so much, May. We really appreciate you taking the time to be here. And thank you to everyone who was here to attend. Don't forget that you can go back watch any of the past presentations at ALP's YouTube page, and I can drop that link in the chat again. And we are also going to be having a Civics Fair on Monday, which is the 26th of July, at the Grow North Farm. And so the details are up on the screen. There are going to be a lot of community partners there, and it should be a great way to meet some folks in person and learn more about how you can get involved in municipal government. So we really hope that we will see you there on Monday. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you then.